Hi, and welcome to my YouTube session. Today, I'll be teaching you guys how to create MySQL triggers. Someone might ask what a MySQL trigger is. A MySQL trigger is a specialized procedure that sends automatic response to events in tables and in views as far as MySQL database is concerned. Okay, so there are certain instances or use cases in our database system where we ensure that tables and views are in synchronization with any activities that happens or occurs. For example, let's take an inventory system that keeps track of products, various products. And then we also have an orders table within the inventory system. The orders table takes track of any order that has been made by a client. Now, whenever an order is made by a client, we expect that the administrator have to manually update the products table. So from a high level perspective, a client walks to our shop and wants to buy, for instance, 10 bags of rice. And our inventory shop has about 20 bags of rice. After the order, we expect that the administrator manually goes into the products table and updates the products table with the remaining bags of rice left. But this is quite cumbersome and tedious when it comes to complicated systems, right? So triggers have been built and optimized to alleviate these bottlenecks or to avoid these manual processes, right? So automatically triggers updates our products table with the remaining bags of rice left. Okay, so we will try an example where we will create a database system, an inventory system to be precise. Then we create two tables within our database system, which are going to be the products table and the orders table. We are going to create a trigger procedure, and this trigger procedure is always going to respond to events whenever we make an order. So let's get into it. Okay, so now let me view the database. Okay, so now let me view my databases. Okay, so I already have inventory system here, but for the case of the demo, I'll delete it and recreate it again. So drop inventory system. Sorry, I made a mistake. So it is inventory system. Sorry, another mistake. Drop database. Okay, so that's fine. So let me recreate this again. Create database, inventory. Okay, so having done that, show tables. Okay, I can't show a table. I have to first connect to the database which has been created. We need to sync. We need to sync to the database. So you say inventory system. Yes, so once we are done, we can go ahead and create the tables. So the first table we are going to create is the products table, just as I specified earlier on. And then the columns within our tables is the ID, the name, and then we have the quantity. So let's take note. Then we have, sorry, so the structure or the schema creation for table is in this approach. So we have the ID int auto increment primary key. So this is the structure, or this is the SQL syntax in creating tables. So ID int auto increment primary key. So what this means is we are specifying the ID column to be automatically populated by the database, and that is the unique identifier for every records within our products table, hence the primary key. So we go again and then we add another column called name, and because name is going to keep records of a specific product, we define its data type as a varchar to store text, right? Then we have the quantity column. The quantity column is going to store the number of items or the number of products. So its data type is going to be an int, right? Then once we are done, we can execute the SQL query. Having done that, let's view the table schema for the product. So we say describe products. Okay, so we now have the schema defined as the ID having data type of int, name having data type of varchar, quantity having data type of int. Then we go again and also create another table called the order. So the order table is going to keep track of all items that have been ordered. Then now we can maintain our ID column. We then modify the name column, and then we say product ID. The product ID is going to have an int data type, right? Because it's going to keep track of the particular item that was ordered. Then we go again and then add another column, and then we say quantity ordered. So this column is also going to keep track of the number of items ordered. Then now we can now execute our query. So having done that, let's also describe our orders. Okay, so now we can see the schema for our orders as well. Okay, so now we realize that in our products table, we do not have any records, right? We do not have any records in our products table. Realize we do not have any products from our products table. So the product is empty. So if you are trying to compare, or if you are trying to bring it to our daily settings you realize that in our warehouse we have no items, right? So we'll add items to our product. So we say insert into product. Then we have the name, then we have the quantity. So someone might ask why I didn't bring the ID column. So the ID column will be populated by the database. So let's say we want to add bags of rice. So bags of rice is the name of product, and then we are saying quantity. So the quantity is 20 bags. Then we cannot execute this. So we now have one product added to our inventory. We then go again and then we add another item. Then we say bags of sugar. Then we say 40 bags of sugar. Then again, let's add another product. And let's say bags of maize. Then again, we can say 30. So realize that we have added three products to our products table. Or then again in our warehouse, right? So in our warehouse we have 20 bags of rice, we have 40 bags of sugar, we have 30 bags of maize in that order. Now, no no client has come to make an order. Sorry. So we have zero orders from clients. Sorry. So we have zero orders from clients. Our orders table is empty. Okay. So before we populate our orders table, right? And the orders table literally is going to keep track or is going to record all orders made by clients, right? So I'm trying to maintain or I'm trying to use the real world scenario. I'm trying to bring that perspective here so you understand how triggers work in real life situations. Okay, so now let's create the trigger. Okay, so we'll create our triggers and the trigger is going to do the magic here, right? So before we start writing our SQL query for the trigger, our trigger has a lot of semicolons, right? And in SQL, whenever you bring a semicolon, ideally, what it means is it is going to terminate that SQL query you have written. And because we have a lot of semicolons in triggers, anytime we use a semicolon, the query is going to terminate automatically whilst we are not even done writing the query. So what we need is, or what we can do to circumvent that issue, right? What we do now is to disable that functionality, and then when we are done, then we can re-enable that functionality again. So that is the delimiter. We say delimiter, then we bring our backslashes or forward slashes, anyhow you call it, then we hit enter. So when you do this, now you are telling the MySQL engine that we are disabling we are disabling the semicolon, and for that matter, we can write our queries, add our semicolons without MySQL executing it, right? We have to finish writing the entire trigger query before we can go ahead and what execute it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and write our trigger trigger query. So we say create trigger, then insert after others. Okay, so create trigger is a constant keyword in creating triggers, but after that, the insert after others is is user defined. So you are the one to specify the name of the trigger you want to use. But always keep note that when you are creating triggers and when you are naming triggers, ensure the name aligns to the procedure or the event, right? And per this demo or per this walkthrough, I am initiating or I'm making the triggers whenever an order is made. That's why you can see me using the name insert after orders. Okay, so that being done, let's move on. And then we now say after insert on orders, right? So you realize the name of the trigger stated insert after orders. Then again, we say trigger this after insert on orders. There are certain instances you might trigger the order before orders, right? It depends, but I am defining these triggers to always insert after or should trigger after insertion in the orders table. Okay, so having said that, we now move on and say for each row. So we are saying these triggers should always respond anytime there is a record in a row or anytime there is a row added in our table. Make a trigger. So for each row, then now we can say begin. Okay, so I'm taking you through the anatomy of triggers or the structure of how a query trigger is written in MySQL. Okay, so we say begin and then we go ahead and say update update products. So you say update products, that's the products table. Then we say set quantity. So when you see the set keyword, what that implies is anytime there's a trigger, always update the quantity column. Now the quantity column should be quantity minus new dot the quantity ordered. Okay, so the new keyword you are seeing there is used to access the quantity ordered, right? It's making the quantity ordered accessible within the trigger. Do you get it? The quantity ordered is the quantity of item that has been ordered in the orders table, right? So we say set quantity is equal to quantity minus new quantity ordered. Okay, so now we say set quantity is equal to quantity minus new dot quantity ordered. Then now we say where id is equal to where id is equal to new dot. Okay, so we say where id is equal to new dot product id. So the database always makes the update based on a certain id, right? That makes this unique, and it makes this update different from other products. So in a in a simple perspective, what I mean is when you are trying to make the product update, right? For instance, a client ordered for 20 bags of rice, right? Now it is going to make that update to the first what record and not the second record, making this distinct, right? So that's what this line of code is doing, where id is equal to new dot product id. So the product id here correlates to 2. Therefore, the update is just going to be in the second row. So having done that, we are going to terminate our trigger. Okay, so where id is equal to new dot product id, so we terminate, and then you realize that when we started with the query, we had a begin keyword here, so we end it and we say end. Then we finally complete the entire query. So we do this. So let me take you through the anatomy of writing trigger query. So we started with the delimiter. The delimiter was to ensure our semicolons were not working, right? Then we start with the create trigger keyword, which is always mandatory. Then after that, the insert after others is defined, right? It's custom defined by the administrator. So you always make sure the insert after others or the trigger name aligns with what the trigger is doing. Then after insert on others, that's on the others table. For each row, begin update product set quantity is equal to quantity minus new dot quantity ordered, where id is equal to new dot product id. Then we end it, right? So you can write your trigger in a specified or in another approach. Once it meets your use case, that's fine. So you always look at the use case and then you write your trigger to fit the use case. You get it. Then now, after we are done with the trigger, let's let's find out whether our triggers have been created just as SQL is saying. Let's confirm for ourselves. So we say show triggers. Okay, so MySQL is expecting us to end the MySQL query, but you realize that even though show triggers has ended, it is still asking us for another keyword, right? So this is happening because when we enabled the delimiter, we should have what disabled it. So we will go quickly into that. So we'll say delimiter, then we can what? Terminate the delimiter, right? So we still have, even though this is triggered, we still have an error. Okay, so this is still showing. Okay, so to bypass that, you will bring the forward slashes, right? And what it does is to what? Re-enable the delimiters back, right? Initially, we disabled it. So to make it work normally or function as it should function, then we have to what? Enable it back. So you click the forward slashes, you press forward slashes, and then when you execute the query, it says what? It's now displaying our triggers. So we created a trigger called insert after orders. So you can see that. Then we can now try an example, and then let's see whether the products table will be updated automatically when a customer makes an order. So select from products, store update showing up. Okay. So now we have 20 bags of rice, 40 bags of sugar, 30 bags of maize. Okay, so now a customer makes an order. So we say insert into orders. So the quantity, the product ID is the first column. We are ignoring the ID column because that column is automatically populated by the database. So you say product ID. The product ID here, for instance, the client ordered 12 bags of rice. So the product ID here is 1. Then the quantity ordered here is 12 with this use case. Okay, so let's insert another product. So let's make another for another product. So a client walks to our shop and then says he wants 5 bags of maize. So maize has product ID 3 and then the order is 5. So let's go again and then let's go back and search, or let's look inside our products table and let's see if there has been any automatic update. Yes, so you realize that the update is working. So we made 12 orders of bags of rice, right? So the database has automatically subtracted 12 from 20, giving us what? 8. And then we then again made 5 orders for bags of maize. Then you realize that the database has what? Subtracted 25, has subtracted 5 from 30, sorry. Then we now have 25. So you see now the triggers is making this real time. making it seamless, and then automating our processes for us. So the administrator will not have to go into the products table again, trying to manually update the quantity column, making this easier and efficient for the administrator. So this is how triggers work. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening and going through the video to this time. I actually appreciate your time invested. So share in the comment section what you don't understand. What new have you learned? What new thing have you learned? And also recommend me to other people who also would be interested to watch this. Click and subscribe. Thank you.